It really came down to my self-confidence and not knowing if I had an audience out there for this. At this point, I was thinking, "Ugh, I feel like I could do this for myself." What actually really triggered that is I got pregnant.
Hi, I'm Ayana. I spent my career doing exactly what many of you say you want to do, taking ideas from concept to execution inside Fortune 500 companies. Now I help corporate women translate that same skill set into professional independence without pretending you're a 22-year-old startup founder. Today
No
we have
worries.
Desireé Arcisz, who's going to tell us her PTF story. Now, Desireé is the go-to for legal support for content creators. If you've got a new contract, you've got a new brand deal, you want someone like Desireé on your team. And so I'm just really excited to be able to show people that you've been able to take your very deep expertise and profession and to now be a founder in your own right and what that looks like. So let's start with where you came from. Describe your life before you got promoted to founder.
Yes, absolutely. I was just like everyone else coming out of school, especially a 90s kid growing up. Go to school, get the job, work in corporate, right? So, but I did a little bit of extra school because I am an attorney, so it took a little bit longer. So yeah, started off in corporate and then honestly got to a point where I didn't like what I was doing anymore. And I said, why am I not a practicing attorney right now? What am I doing? What's stopping me? What's the problem? And it really came down to my self confidence and not knowing if I had an audience out there for this. And getting past those two things has really just helped me flourish since then. So, do you want me to go back and kind of give a full background or?
Yes, like what kind of law
Okay,
did you do? You don't have to drop the
awesome.
firm, but like what kind of clients
Yeah,
did you have? And then I'm
absolutely.
also always curious about like what was that moment that made you think like, why am I not doing this for myself?
So I started out in honestly very low lift document review. If you're an attorney, you know what this is. It's literally staring at a computer screen all day and going through documents that were sent from the other party during discovery. That's it. You're
Wow.
labeling documents for what the attorneys need when they go to litigation. So again, very low lift, very easy work, right? And I did that for 2 years. And the reason for that is I noticed that I really enjoyed the fact that it paid well at the time and it was extremely flexible. I could take off whenever I wanted, I could work when I wanted. But the thing is, when you take off, when you're 1099, you don't get paid. So you got to kind of, make sure that you're scheduling yourself accordingly because you do have bills. So turns out the place that I was doing document review with, they were hiring internally, but they were hiring for an HR and talent person. And I was like, I can do this. And I had made a lot of good connections there. And I was like, why not? Let's go do it. So it was in the intersection, this is my first time, in the intersection of legal and tech, which was perfect because tech was really coming up at the time. This is 2016 to 2018, mind you. So we're just kind of getting into putting more tech into what we do every day, not just emailing back and forth and video conferencing, right? It was starting to turn into a lot more than that. So it was really cool to be able to work at that intersection because I had gone to law school, I graduated, I was a practicing attorney, but I was able to do it from the e-discovery view at that point, which was really awesome. Um, Essentially, that job took advantage of me. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I just was one of those people at the time, again, go to school, do well, work, right? So I'm like, I can take this on. I can do this too. Everything they threw at me, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that as well. Yeah. So before I knew it, I'm recruiting for every document review project. I'm handling all of their internal HR communications. I'm handling everyone's like bar stuff, making sure that people are actually licensed. I'm doing all the paperwork for that. I'm hiring internally as well. And I was internal HR. So it was just a lot. And I'm like, I need to do something else. Completely transitioned into tech at that point and moved on to an agency role. So the difference between recruiting internally and recruiting at an agency is much more fast paced. I was like, this is gonna be so fun because recruiting came easy to me. And that's the part of my job that I really liked anyway. So I'm like, cool, let's do it. Let's kill it, right? I move into a tech recruiting role, learn everything I can about software engineering, all the way from a basic software engineering role all the way to cybersecurity roles is what I was recruiting for at this point. So it makes me more of a well-rounded person when we're looking at what
Yeah.
businesses actually need. I'm working with smaller businesses. I'm learning the internal intricacies of what they need and what they do. A lot of them don't even have an HR department. They don't have any kind of a talent department. So you kind of had to act a little bit as both of those things, especially when we're talking about folks who are interviewing people who they might be great at their job, but it doesn't make them a good interviewer, right? So helping and walking them through that process. Really, actually, at this point, I was thinking, "Ah, I feel like I could do this for myself. I could own like a talent recruitment firm,
Mm-hmm.
and more on that later, because who knows, maybe one day."
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so at that point, I had been working at the agency for about 2 years or so. They had hired a couple of folks in the sales role, and it was for a very specific part of the business. It was called DRS, Direct Recruitment Services. And I was like, yeah, let me see if I can do this role when it came to me, which I really
Right.
honestly, I look back and I'm like, here we go again, taking on everything because we're just like, we can do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I took that on. It did not work out. That was actually the time where I was like, oop, maybe I should be doing something else. Instead of really moving into legal still, I found another recruitment firm to work with and worked in their sales department. Had to unlearn a lot of the things that I was taught at the first place. They wanted me to be like a sales rep that just calls people, calling all day, getting in touch with
Calling.
folks, trying to make them, yes, cold calling, trying to make them use our services without getting to know them and their business. And for me, I'm like, I'm a relationship seller. I'm a relationship person. I knew that from the start. That's how I was so great at recruitment, because when you're talking to folks, you're walking them through these recruitment processes that can last up to months, depending on how high the role, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, I was like, okay, I can do this. But we wanted two different things. And so
Right.
I learned to, in the second sales role, move more into that relationship selling. In between all of this, I was getting more involved in venture capital. That is when I said to myself, why am I not doing this for myself? And by this, I mean a law firm. There are a lot of small businesses out there that could utilize services. There are a lot of large law firms out there who want to work with small businesses, but they have rules. They have to meet minimum hourly requirements. They have to make a certain amount of money off of their clients. So they can only work with them so far. But when you're working for yourself, you get to decide those things. So I said, I'm
Yeah.
going to do this different. I'm gonna not charge hourly. I charge by project, and by project I mean complexity, length of contract, and things like that. And I don't want to charge for the small things, a quick email, a text, a phone call, unless it gets out of control. Then we have
Mm-hmm.
to set boundaries because that's very important too. My time is still important.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to look at the folks around me, and I'm like, not to say anything against venture capital, but the tech world is extremely different. There are people coming up with solutions to problems that we never even thought about.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm watching all these people start businesses that are flourishing. And I'm like,
Mm.
what did you go to school for? What's your background? Whatever else. And it would be like someone who used to be a nurse who just jumped into health tech, has no tech background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't know how to build anything. And is just like, I got a team, I started raising money, and this is my business now. This is what I do.
Wow.
And I'm like, why can't I use the very thing I went to school for in order to build something for myself?
Right.
Why is that such a foreign concept to me when there's people who are doing things that are adjacent to what they went to school for and
Yes.
flourishing? Why can't I do the same? So that's
Wow.
really when it started to build up in me. I was still just a little
Yes.
too nervous to do it. Yeah. And so what actually really triggered that is I got pregnant. I got pregnant and I started really thinking like I need a job. But then I'm like, you can create your own job. Like you have a skill set. You have a skill
Mm-hmm.
set that you can bring to the table. What are you doing? And so everything kind of kicked off from there.
That's incredible. Thank you for all that context because it really
Mhm.
allowed me to understand what are the things that were clicking for you, right? So when you talk
Right.
about your story and how you got involved in VC, to me,
Mhm.
that sounds like where you got the inspiration. You're like, wait a minute, look at all these people who are creating their own way with their expertise and sometimes out of their expertise. And I find that we often don't have that aha moment or the opportunity for that aha moment in corporate environments because you're surrounded by other people who are just trained to make the corporation reduce their risk or make more money. Like you're not actually surrounded by people who are being innovative,
Right.
and you found yourself in a space where you got to see like, oh wow, there's another model, there's way more models than I thought there were. That makes a lot of
Exactly.
sense. So it makes a lot of sense that that was part of your journey, and that's a part of the things that we hear often in this podcast series. There's some kind of aha moment that happens through proximity to innovation.
Yes.
So,
Exactly
what
that.
were some things that you did in that first transition? So, you're at a point now, you're like, wait a minute, I'm pregnant. I don't want to have to look for a job. Let me make my own job. What were some of the first things you did as you started to like make that decision, act on that decision?
But I reached out to other law firms that had already done this. So I was surrounded by women who already own their own businesses, which was amazing. Women are starting businesses faster than anyone else in the US. So it just so happened that I had run into other service providers who kind of hung out in the venture capital space a bit. And they were able to talk to me about the things that they first did when they started their businesses. So between those couple of women, and then also I have a really good colleague friend who's a go-to-market specialist that I had a lot of conversations with about just things that you need from an outside perspective. So things like, do I actually need a website? How do I change my LinkedIn? What should I call myself? The things that matter to just get something there. So it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be perfect, but it does have to exist. That's what she taught me. And then from a law firm perspective, I talked to the women just about how to even transition, right? Because everyone's like, oh, we know you as selling recruitment services. That's it. So I had to start leading with, I'm a lawyer, not I sell recruitment services and I'm also a lawyer. So having to do that again, it really got to me to the point where I was like, you need to just say this out loud. I would just stand in the mirror and be like, I'm a lawyer. I can be your general counsel. I can help you with X, Y, and Z. Just practicing and saying those words out loud. I remember one conversation I had. There was actually one man, too, by the way, who also owns his own law firm. One conversation I had where he was like, you don't get to practice law. You are allowed to practice law because you pass the bar. This is your right. So you need
Mm,
to look at it that way. So
yes.
I was like, you're correct, right? People who don't pass the bar don't get to
Do not
practice law.
practice law.
I
Right.
passed two of them. So I get
Right.
to practice law.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the first things that I did. Kind of helped me build up the way that I was going to talk about the things that I do. And then
Mhm.
also just the fundamentals of what it needs to look like when someone searches my name on like Google or LinkedIn or whatever else.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. So your first steps sound like they were around mindset, right? Those affirmations in
Yes.
the mirror. And also, how are you going to get out into the market and actually make money versus receive a paycheck?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I love that because I didn't hear you say, I jumped and looked for an LLC name. I went and like spent all this money on fancy logos, right? And those are some of the things that I am constantly teaching with my community is that there's a lot of stuff that we feel prone to do, but it's really out of imposter syndrome and it's out of
Yes.
thinking that we need to compete with the corporate entity that we came from. And it's like you're not competing with
Yes.
anybody like at that level. You're not competing with Google or with a law
No.
firm. Like you are
No.
competing with yourself to go out and get
Right.
your first 5 clients, your first 10 clients, and really build from
Hmm.
there. So that's really
Exactly.
confirmation to hear you say that as
Hmm.
well. So
Hmm.
now, describe your life now. What's it like being a mom and a founder? What are some of your favorite parts or least favorite parts? Tell us about Desiree today.
Yeah, absolutely. I no longer have an alarm clock. I know most
Period.
people would probably, I know most people would probably be like, excuse me, I need to be up at 5 and I need to work out. And no, we do not do alarm clocks around here anymore because I feel like I'm my best self when I get the rest that I need. And limiting that, especially as a mom, is not fair to me. And I say that because I was truly blessed with a son who sleeps till about 8, 9 o'clock every morning, even if he has a couple of wake ups overnight. And so, because of that, at first, I'm like, I need to be up at 6 and I need to be online and I need to make this LinkedIn post. And I'm going to make my list. I'm going to drink my coffee. I was doing those things because it was performative, not because it actually served me.
Hmm.
So I turned more into the I wake up when I wake up person, and I actually like that a lot more. Hearing an alarm is like the most annoying thing to me. When I hear my husband's alarm, I'm like, oh. So
Right.
that's number one, no alarms. And then being a mom, yeah, I really feel like women supporting women is very important when you own your own thing. And I say that because I have a nanny now, and I am very blessed to have her because I can do things like this without being interrupted. I'm home, and I know a lot of people would say, like, well, I work out of the house and this is how I focus. I focus in this room. I built this room for myself and I'm still am building it in 2020 because I've been working from home for that long. So still doing that and being in this space that I've curated at my desk and all the things is really helpful to me because I personally feel like being out of the house and going and co-working, that's for socializing. I can't do it. Everyone's
Mm-hmm.
not like me, but that's just how I have to
Yeah,
run my
that's
day.
fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to be home a lot because, especially as a new mom, a lot of the clothes that used to fit me, and I know a lot of people probably wouldn't say this loud, but I'm saying it, they don't fit right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, as a new mom, I have to be comfortable. And if I'm on a Zoom call and I'm not feeling it that day, and I'm like, I just need to put on a nice top and we'll wear sweatpants on the bottom and no one will ever know, that's what we're doing today. Okay. So, I feel like I've shown myself and have worked up the confidence to give myself a lot of grace in this world as a solopreneur, as both a mom and an entrepreneur. Because I think as long as you do that, as long as you make that space to say, okay, these problems exist, these are things that I have to work through, but they're not going to ruin my day, we're
Yeah,
fine.
right.
Yeah.
It's a completely different energy and a different posture
Oh, yeah.
for control. Like you now have
Yes.
control over your day and your mind, and you have the freedom to decide what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what kind of clients you're going to have. And
Absolutely.
there's so many of us who have been wearing these like corporate capes that we had everything except for freedom
Yes.
and control.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes I think, and like I said, just like the waking up and drinking coffee and all of that, who are you doing that for? Are you doing it for yourself or are you doing it because it sounds good and you want to follow what you think someone should be doing or you want to follow what you would? Because that is what I used to do in corporate. We wake up
Hmm.
early, we go to the gym, we get our workout in, we come back, we shower, we do coffee, and then we
Yeah,
start our day. That's
right.
literally what I used to do.
Hmm.
So trying to transfer that over as a founder is interesting because, like you said, more control. And I think it's very important for us to realize then you make your own schedule.
It's been so interesting. Like, even for me, I've been a full time founder now for 3 years, but I've always
Mhm.
had multiple ventures on top of my 9 to 5. Like, I've just been crazy
Right.
like that. But it's been interesting to see how I'm like reconnecting with myself in a way that I haven't since before I was in the workplace, like realizing what I like and
Exactly.
what I don't like and like what I actually need and how often do I
Mhm.
really like to be outside, And to your
That
point,
part.
a lot of that morning schedule that we used to do was because we had to be somewhere in a seat by 8 or 9 o'clock. And so that's
Yep.
the reprogramming. And we as women have different cyclical schedules that the workplace was not made to accommodate in the first place. So we're
Ever.
like we're all like in this really interesting awakening. I mean, I'm doing this series called Endless Possibilities. Like I want somebody to make a business
Mhm.
for that. Like
Yeah.
teaching us and showing us like what is our real cycle for working because we don't
Mm,
know. We've always been on somebody else's
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely. It's funny you bring that up. They actually are now finally creating, as I'm a gym rat, I love going to the gym and I love
Hmm.
Pilates. They
Hmm.
are creating different systems for women based on your cycle. So, days you should be lifting, days you should just be
Yes.
stretching and doing cardio. And I don't just
Right.
include those days, but it will break down the entire month for you and tell
Hmm.
you, like, on this day, you're going to start feeling a little weaker.
Right.
So, you need to do something different. We need to do the same thing
Exactly.
with work. Yeah,
Exactly. Like somebody make that business, please, for us.
please.
Make that
That'd be
app.
great.
I love that. I love it. Okay. So what's one piece of advice? And feel free to drop more than one gem, that's fine too. But what's an advice or an affirmation that you would give someone who's feeling like they're on the threshold of becoming a founder? Perhaps where you were, thinking back a couple years ago, Desiree, in the VC
Mhm.
arena, thinking like,
Mhm.
I could probably do this for myself. What's something you would tell
Mhm.
them?
Comparison is absolutely the thief of joy. I have a lot of founder friends who are much further along in their journey than I am, and they live comfortably and sustainably off of what they've built. And I'm not there yet, honestly. If it was just me solo, I would not be there yet. So, with that understanding of starting something with the understanding of it's you against you every single day. No one's coming, no one's helping unless you ask for it, but not in that way. There's no one who's going to push you up that hill. You have to do that yourself, right? So even when you do ask, that's not someone else's job. Their
Yes.
job is to help you with the thing you asked about. So pay attention to what's going on around you, obviously, right? Because regardless of what you're selling or what you're building, you have to see what your audience needs and also who else might be building that might mirror what you're doing, but not in a competitive way, just in an okay, I see you way. Maybe even get to know that person. You might be going through the same struggles, right? So
Yes.
I tell everyone to think about yourself like Amazon. How did Amazon get so large? I don't know if you've ever heard the owner or creator talk about this, but he basically was like, I never paid attention to what my competitors were doing. I paid attention to what my customers wanted and needed. That's the reason
Right.
why you can return something on Amazon to this day with just a few clicks and they don't care. They're like, okay, yep, return done, because it
Yes.
makes it easy. So that's why I keep
Hmm.
ordering.
Right.
So you got me, Amazon, you know?
Hmm.
And so if you're just paying attention and building on the blocks that you've created for yourself from yesterday. Say yesterday I wasn't feeling well and so I got to half of my list, right? That's another thing too. Create lists, but don't stick to them so heavily that you're just like overworked and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What was the list created for? And prioritize. If something needs to be pushed to Friday because you got busy, then that's just what it is. It's okay. You make the
Hmm.
rules now. You create
Exactly.
your schedule.
Right.
So, it's all about you now. Although you're serving other people, whether it's a service business or a product, you as a founder are serving you first. So make sure that you're on your schedule, your timeline, the things that you find important that you're doing, and stick with that. And don't pay attention to what everyone else does. The founders that I know, some of them are up at 6 a.m., but then other ones are like, yeah, I haven't had an actual alarm in like 3 years, like me. And that's fine. Whatever works for
Right.
you works for you.
They're
And
surviving, they're
stop
not
comparing,
dying.
yes, and stop comparing yourself to what they're making or what they're able to do. I would love to sponsor everything and be a part of everything and go to a founders weekend and attend this conference over here that's pretty expensive. But I say to myself, you know what? Actually, maybe I'll speak at that conference instead, and that's how I'll attend it. So I started shooting my shot that way. You need to start thinking differently and stop just saying I want to be like this person, because you're you and nobody else can be you. So you need to stick to being you. So I know that was
Yes.
long, but and
No,
maybe a
that's
few gems in there,
beautiful.
but
Beautifully
yeah,
well said. Comparison
yeah,
is the thief of joy. And this concept of looking to other people and thinking that their journey needs to be your journey. And that's just not how it
right.
works. That's one of the most fundamental things to know as a founder is like your journey
Hmm.
has to be your own. And you have to be so focused on every incremental step, every iteration is going to
Yes,
make you better. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm doing it. Right. But if you're so focused
right.
looking at everybody else, you're missing your own stuff going on right in front of you.
Exactly that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Desiree. I love talking to you. I love hearing your story in your own words. And I hope that this inspires someone else who needed to hear this as well and needed to understand that the things that they're considering for themselves in their future is possible. And
Yeah.
I think that you're going to be an inspiration to someone, whether they're in the legal field or not, to actually take that step. So thank you.